Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Well-Storied podcast. I'm Kristen Kieffer, and this podcast is where I translate articles that I've written for the Well-Storied blog into audio so you can listen in on the go. As we typically do on Mondays, today we are diving back into the Well-Storied archives to cover an article that I originally wrote and published on September 9th, 2016. I'm always so excited to go back into the archives and to freshen up articles and then record them for you guys. It's really neat to see articles that I've written in the past and to see kind of how those topics affected my writing life then and whether or not I still use the techniques and the tips that I talked about in that article now. And in today's case, for our article and our episode today, I absolutely do find that this technique that we're going to talk about is something that still works incredibly well for my writing process. It's really stood the test of time for me so far, and I think it may work out well for you as well. There is, of course, no universal writing technique or tip that will be right for every writer, but I think this one is really worth giving a try. So what is this episode all about? You may be thinking right about now. The title of the article we are covering today is Should You FastDraft Your Novel? And so without any further ado, let's dig into the episode and I can tell you all about what fast drafting is and why I think you might want to give it a try, etc. If you would like to read along as you listen into today's episode, just head on over to well-storied.com/fastdraft. You can also find that link in today's episode description. So let's get started. Should you fast draft your novel? Is fast drafting the secret to finally rocking your first draft? A few weeks ago, I hosted a poll asking if you'd prefer I continue publishing long-form content here on the blog, or if you'd be happy to see a few shorter tip-packed posts thrown into the mix. Overwhelmingly, you were all up for articles of any length, so long as they were full of helpful writerly advice. This thrilled me, as fast drafting, while not that big of a topic to discuss, has absolutely revolutionized my writing process in recent months, and I've been ever so eager to share it with you since. So, what in the world is fast drafting, and how might it transform your writing process too? Let's break it down, writers. Why do writers fast draft their novels? If you think the term fast drafting is pretty self-explanatory, you'd be correct. Fast drafting is quite literally the process of writing the first draft of your novel or short story, novella, etc. as quickly as possible. No hesitation, no excuses, no editing as you go. That said, fast drafting won't be the right technique for every writer. Fast drafting works best for those who have a very detailed understanding of their stories before beginning to write, and who find themselves quite capable of cranking out, say, 1,000 or more words in an hour. Of course, those words won't be the most beautiful words in the world, and they're not meant to be. Fast drafting works off the principle that first drafts aren't meant for pretty prose, but rather for getting one's exciting mess of a story idea out of their head and down onto paper. Why? Well, because so much of the magic of storytelling happens in editing. That's where plots come together and pacing evens out, where characters and themes are buffed to high shine, and where each and every sentence is tailored to perfection. Because so much changes in the subsequent drafts of a manuscript, writers who fast draft don't consider it worth their while to pour energy into making their first drafts read beautifully. It's bare bones for them, then on to the magic of editing. But is fast drafting right for you? If I've learned anything in my time as a writing blogger, it's that there's absolutely no single technique that works best for every writer. We all have different lives, different creative processes, different schedules and styles of stories to tell. As someone who loves creating detailed outlines and far prefers revising to drafting, fast drafting my novels has worked wonders for my creative process. But the same may not hold true for you. Is it worth giving fast drafting a shot? In my book, absolutely. You never know what may revolutionize your writing process until you try it. But fast drafting does take time to explore. So if you're wary of giving this technique a go, here are a few pros and cons to help you decide whether or not to commit. The pros of fast drafting your novel. You complete a full first draft in very little time. You don't spend precious writing time perfecting scenes you'll only cut or change in editing. you don't get caught up in the self-perpetuating loop of editing as you go. You learn to push past doubts and fears and get her done, and you'll likely find it much easier to maintain writing momentum. However, there are some cons of fast drafting, such as you'll likely have to rewrite every last line during editing, or at least most of them. You may experience burnout after so many days of fast, fierce writing. Fast drafting may not work well with your writing process, especially if you're a pantser, and fast drafting also isn't as effective if you don't have much time to put toward writing on a frequent basis. So, how can you fast draft successfully? Think you're ready to give fast drafting a try? Hooray! There is no set rule, however, for how quickly you should fast draft your novel. Some writers complete first drafts in as little as 4 or 5 days, whereas my own fast drafts usually take 4 to 8 weeks to complete. To put that into context for you, my first drafts typically fall between 85 and 110,000 words, so I write roughly 2,300, 2,500 words a day when I'm fast drafting. Your schedule and writing speed will have a big impact on how quickly you're able to fast draft your book. But what matters is not so much how quickly you fast draft, but rather that you're maintaining writing momentum and refusing to edit as you go. If you want to make the most of your fast drafting experience, however, here are a few other tips and tricks to employ. Tip number 1, pre-write your novel. If you know exactly what you need to write next at any given moment, you're unlikely to run into any snags as you work to fast draft your novel. That's why I prefer to do a lot of pre-writing before beginning to draft, going so far as to outline my book scene by scene. I've heard that some pantsers enjoy fast drafting, but I've yet to actually meet any fast drafting pantsers for myself. If that's you, don't hesitate to get in touch, however. I would love to learn about how your writing process works as you fast draft as a pantser. If you're looking for a little guidance as you pre-write your next novel, you may enjoy the Pre-Write Project, which is the well-storied 143-page workbook designed to zap the overwhelm out of the pre-writing process. So if you'd like to check that out, I will try to remember to include that link in the episode description, but you can also check it out at well-storied.com/prewrite. Tip number 2, be intentional. Fast drafting can be quite time-consuming, in the sense that it's most effective if you can throw an hour or 2 into writing most days of the week. Knowing this, you'll want to be intentional about carving out blocks of time to write. Let your friends and family know what you're up to. Take a day or 2 off work if you're able. Go on a television strike. In whatever ways you can, make your schedule work to your advantage. Tip number 3, ditch expectations. If you're fast drafting a novel, your writing is going to suck. It really is as simple as that. The best thing you can do is ditch the idea that a rough draft should be anything other than rough and just right. You'll thank yourself later when you aren't ditching an unnecessary scene you put hours of care into crafting. And finally, tip number 4, set goals. If you're the type of writer who can crank out 15 or 20,000 words in a day, I don't think you'll have any problem fast drafting your novel. But if endless writing energy isn't on your side, setting goals can help you see your fast drafting through. I personally find it helpful to set a deadline for my finished draft, but you may wish to choose a daily goal instead, such as working for an hour or writing a minimum of 2,000 words each day. When I fast draft, I write a complete, if messy, rough draft. Some writers, however, fast draft a little differently. I've chatted with writers who only fast draft their book's major scenes, preferring to fill in the gaps once those scenes have been finalized in revisions. I've also heard of writers who prefer to fast draft only dialogue and action, saving things like narrative, descriptions, and other less plot-driven elements for later drafts. How you choose to fast draft your novel is truly up to you. Remember, there is no right way to write. I would encourage every writer to give fast drafting a try at least once in their writing lives, in the hope that it may prove as helpful to them as it has to me. But if you know for certain that fast drafting won't work well with your writing process, have no fear. Go forth and rock your novel style, writer. Writers, I hope you enjoyed today's episode despite it being a little bit on the shorter side as compared to some of the episodes we've had in the past. I was really excited to share this technique with you all over again because it really is truly something that I consider to have changed my writing process forever and really helped me become a better writer and more in tune with my creative process. So I hope it will do the same for you as well. If you do decide to give it a shot, make sure to shout me out on Twitter or over on Facebook or shoot me an email at Kristen@well-storied.com. I would love to hear how this works out for you. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to go ahead and give it a like, a rating, a review, whatever you can from wherever you're listening in from. If you are listening in from somewhere that's not perhaps your favorite place to listen to podcasts to, remember that the Well-Storied podcast is also on iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, and the Well-Storied website, so you can check it out in any of those places. I don't know if you're aware, but I also have a Patreon account set up for Well-Storied. If you haven't heard of it, Patreon is simply a website where creators can go and set up an account, and then people who enjoy the creator's work can head on over to their account, to their page, and make a small monthly pledge to help that creator continue doing what they're doing. And so I have a page for Well-Storied over on Patreon, and by pledging a small monthly amount, which begins as low as $1 each month, you really help me cover a lot of the expenses that go along with running Well-Storied, with running the podcast, with upkeeping the website, with marketing, all that sorts of stuff, so I can continue creating new articles, new workbooks, new podcast episodes, running the chats, and really just trying to reach out to other writers and help them achieve their dreams. So if you happen to have any extra money, any extra cash laying around this month and you would like to throw it behind a creator that you believe in, a website that you believe in, and that happens to be Well-Storied for you, I would love, love, love for you to come on over to patreon.com/wellstoried. As always, I will leave that link for you in the episode description below. And I would just love for you to check that out and maybe see if it's the right choice for you. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, guys, and for listening to my spiel here at the end. As always, I wish you the most wonderful of weeks, the most wonderfully wordy of weeks, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.